Welcome to SmallTalk by Sfarim Chatter. I'm Nachi Weinstein. On this episode of SmallTalk, I'm going to be joined by Savitsky, who is the author of the newly published book, Life's Special Moments, Tzipor 2, which is the sequel to the first book, Tzipor. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Let's start off. Tell the listeners about the book. And also, when I say about the book, Life's Special Moments, Tzipor 2, we should also tell listeners about Tzipor 1 and what they both are about.
Absolutely. So here's the idea. You know, when we look at Pasuk in Torah or we look at learning, we understand that there's a way for us to look at it in our own unique fashion. The Torah is considered it's a pardes, pshat, remez, drush, sod. There are many ways to look at it. You could turn it over, find new things. I looked at the mitzvah of the Tzipor, and I was trying to figure out, what is this mitzvah all about? I don't understand it. Hardly anybody does it. And why is it? It's so strange that the Torah tells you, ki yikareh, you start off with, well, it happens by accident, fortuitously. Well, do you know anything that we have which is fortuitous? No. We're a religion that everything is be prepared. I was an old Boy Scout. It used to be prepared. You're be prepared. If you're a Torah Jew, be prepared. You're always planning. You're always shloshim yom l'fnei achag, sholem medoshim. You're always preparing. So my first question was, why is it that you can't prepare? And second of all, of course, we know that the Torah gives you the reward. Very rarely, except for kibbut avayim, and maybe there's one other mitzvah, but it doesn't happen too often. So I was intrigued with this mitzvah, and I said, there's got to be more to it. If God gave us this mitzvah, there's got to be more to it, especially as I would speak, as I speak all over in hotels, conventions, Shabbos, so on, and all my other capacities that I have. And I would always say to people, how many people have done the Tzipor? Well, it was 5% maybe. Probably in the 5% probably didn't do it right, but people 5%. So you weren't doing it. So I said, so why is God giving us this mitzvah? And I said, I think I figured out a new reason. The reason is because in life, you see, some things happen that are not expected. We're in a supermarket, we're on a plane, we're on a train, wherever we are. And all of a sudden, an opportunity comes along, like that Tzipor, to do a moment of chesed. And if you don't do it, it flies away. It's exactly like the bird. It's just gone forever. You'll never get it back again. And I said to myself, wow, that's why God gave us this mitzvah, in addition, of course, to the Tzipor, to tell us that in life, there are these moments, magic moments of chesed. And if you don't know them, if you don't realize them, you've lost out on something great. And I call those things Tzipor moments, special moments. Tzipor moments. Now, once I knew this, and once I understood that there's such a thing as a Tzipor moment, of course, I started going out, not becoming neurotic, but looking around, saying to myself, well, maybe something happened. And then an incredible thing happened. I had a Tzipor moment. Where was it? It was in an airport, in LaGuardia Airport, on a business trip, where a lady who was not Jewish was walking down, and she came to the counter. She had a long garment bag. I didn't know what it was. I was curious. And the next thing I know, this lady is crying. And I look around, and there's not one person in the entire area, United Airlines. No one is paying attention to this lady. And I'm going to myself, okay, God, why did you put me here? Why am I here? Why am I in United Airlines on a Wednesday? And I went over to her, and I asked her, I said, why are you crying? What's going on? She said, well, her name was Mary McGuire. I said, what's the matter? She said, well, I'm getting married on Saturday in my church, my lifelong dream. And I asked them if I could just take my wedding gown and I could keep it on the plane. They said, yes, you could hang it up, but they had to change the planes. The whole thing happened. Whatever it was, they said, no, you've got to put it in baggage. And she said, you know what's going to happen. It's going to get lost. It's going to get ruined. It's going to get dirty, all the kind of things. She was hysterical. I said, well, Mary, you don't have to worry about a thing, because this is your Tzipor moment. It's my Tzipor moment. I didn't tell her that, of course, but I was thinking that. And then I said, I'll take care of it. And so what I did is I basically went to the counter. I convinced them that another friend of mine who was with me was not Jewish. We should carry the wedding gown on the first row. People would change their seats. We'll carry it. We'll forego our delicious cup of coffee on United Airlines. And that's what we did. And everyone on the plane knew about it. People, when we came on the plane, people were clapping and applauding. My friend, by the way, who was my PR agent, was not Jewish, but he insisted on wearing a yarmulke. And there we were on the plane. And then what happened was we got off the plane and everyone was waiting and we were talking to people. People were thanking us. And there were probably 8 Jewish people on the plane. I didn't know they were Jewish. And every one of them came over. Thank you so much. Today you made us feel so proud to be Jewish. Congratulations. I mean, it was just beautiful. And one lady who was waiting in the corner said, I have to tell you something. I grew up as an observant Jew, but I strayed so many years. And I've been thinking about, God, give me a sign that I should come back. And there you were on the plane today. And said, you know what? This Friday, I'm going to start to light candles. And then she left. And then I called my wife and I said, listen, I had the greatest day in Columbus, Ohio. She said, you didn't have your business meeting. I said, it doesn't make a difference. And I said to myself, that's a Tzipor moment, because if I would have missed that opportunity, it would have been gone forever. And then I started talking about other things that happened to me when I would go away for Pesach in a hotel, or I would go to a shul on Shabbos, or I would go to a convention. I would tell them about my idea of Tzipor and start to tell them stories. And then people would come over to me and they'd say to me, you know something? I want to tell you something that happened to me. And they would tell me a story. I said, wow, it's beautiful. When did it happen? And they'd say, 30 years ago. I go, what? 30 years ago? And you remember this? Oh, 30 years ago? You think I will ever forget that moment? I'll never, ever forget that moment. And so because of that, over the years, people kept coming. I would do a Costa Rica cruise. People would come over to me, tell me stories, and so on and so forth. And I accumulated those stories, all true stories, amazing stories of people and their Tzipor moment. And that's why I put out the first book. And luckily, Feldheim loved it, and it was a big seller for them. It was very popular, and it was great. I mean, people came over and kept telling me about it. And because of that, I put out the second book, because so many people called me with their wonderful stories. I was able to put out a second book. But this time we called it Seize the Moment, because that's really what it's about. It's about seizing that moment in life. Then if you didn't do that, who knows what would happen. And in my first book, and actually in my second book, I talk about what are the criteria for a Tzipor moment. And so one of them is you're not expecting it. You're going about your normal daily life, whatever you're doing, you have no idea that there's going to be an opportunity. The second is that it's kind of a little bit out of your comfort zone, just like the Tzipor. Who really wants to touch the bird, send it away? Should I do it? Should I walk away? But it's a little bit out of your comfort zone, but it's really a battle between the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov. And basically, the Yetzer Tov is saying, hey, this is a good opportunity. Take advantage. The Yetzer Hara is saying, yeah, don't worry, someone else will do it. Don't worry about it. And the third thing is that you really don't have a lot of time to think about it. There's really not someone to consult. You're not going to put together a business plan. And the fourth is if you lose it, it's gone forever. You'll never, ever, ever get that moment back. And that's what a Tzipor moment is. And then I found an incredible quote, not from a Gadol B'Torah, but a Gadol B'Speaking, Winston Churchill. And this is what he said. I want to read it to you because it's amazing. He said, to each there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing, unique to them and fitted to their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for what could have been their finest hour. And that's really the point. The point is it could have been your finest hour. And when I know that, and I saw people would talk about it, that's why I decided to write the book. And so the message of the book is really, there's a story. The stories are great. They're wonderful. They're interesting. It's a great Friday night read or Shabbos afternoon. It's a 2.5 hour fantastic read, all ages, from teenagers all the way through senior citizens, men, women. It doesn't make a difference. It's a beautiful, beautiful read with great stories. But at the end, the most important thing is to get the message. The message is HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts us in a place for a reason. And if we understand when we look around and we say to ourselves, why are we here? Why are we standing on the corner of 55th and 13th? Why are we in the supermarket now? Why are we on this plane? There's a reason for it. And then you have to look around and say, maybe there's an opportunity to do something, some chesed. And once you realize it, then you know what? Your whole life changed. And then you can have a Tzipor moment. And does it really meet the criteria? L'man yitavlach? You bet it does. Once you do something like that, you feel so good, you glow. Laharachta yamim, your days, you feel great about yourself. So that's the idea. And that's why I wrote the book. And I'm really happy about it because I think people love it, and I've gotten great reaction to it. People love the stories, but they love the message. And that's the thing. The message is important.
So you're a businessman by trade, not an
That's
author.
correct.
So what was it like compiling these stories, getting all these stories from people, putting it together, writing this book with books?
Well, it was a lot of fun, honestly, because I love people and I love to speak to people, and I think everybody's unique. And because of this, I would get texts. I had a special email for Tzipor, Savitsky at Tzipor. I would look every morning to see did somebody actually see it. After I would speak someplace, because I spoke a lot, been very, even though I'm a businessman, I've been very involved in the Jewish community, president of the OU, a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, and so I speak a lot all over. And after I would speak, people would always like tell me, "Wow, it was just amazing." So it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, obviously, and much more than I thought. But it's very rewarding, extremely rewarding. And actually, when I finished, and I actually wanted to find a publisher, I love Feldheim. I love some of their work. I think they're very, very, well-known and respected organization. And so I called them, and I actually called Yitzchak Feldheim, and I said, I wrote a book. I'm not a writer, but I think it's good. And he said, okay, send me the manuscript. I sent him the manuscript. He said, call me after the weekend. So I said, fine. I called him after the weekend. He said to me, I want to be honest with you. I didn't read the book. I said, okay, I understand. He said, but my wife read it and she loved it. And because of that, we want to print it. So therefore, that's what happened. So, I think it's been a great experience, one that I never did before, but I love having the book. And I love when people come over to me and they tell me, oh, I read your book. I read the stories. So yeah, it's been wonderful. It's been great.
How does the second volume differ from the first?
Well, first of all, the second volume is just new stories. I mean, it's all new stories. So that's how it differs in a way. But of course, I try to also expand it a little bit. The second book, I also have it in the first person, where when I didn't have it in the first book, but now the first book I really told the story. Now I really have the people tell their story. I give them an introduction, but then I have them tell the story. And just when I think I've heard about every story there is, someone tells me something new, and I just marvel and go to myself, wow, isn't that also? But also in the second book, I wanted to really push the message a little bit more. And so at the end of the book, I have this thing that's called "You have to be in it to win it," like in the lottery. And I said, if you never even experience like the concept of chesed, you're never gonna. Because people come over to me and say to me, "I've been looking around for my Tzipor moment." I said, "Don't look around. It'll be there. It'll be there for you if you just open your eyes. It'll be there." And I wanted to, and both books I have two different endings for the book. In my first book, it's very interesting because in my first book, it was a woman who was in a shul that I was speaking in who was following every word that I was saying, and I knew that she had a great story. I couldn't wait to davening to be over. She's going to come over to me, tell me her story, and she did come over. I said, "Okay, I saw the way you were listening. Obviously, you've got a great story. What is it?" She said, "My story is very simple. The story is, I wish you were here last week, not this Friday." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because I'll tell you what happened to me yesterday." And she told me an interesting story. How she was in a supermarket. There was a woman in front of her, a nice lady. She had like maybe 5 items. And she went to the counter to pay. And she was obviously she had food stamps. That's what it was. And it was the 31st. She thought it was the first. Anyway, they yelled at her. They told her they can't do it. She ran out of the store with the 5 items left on the counter. And then this lady came to the counter, not knowing the story. And she asked, and they told her. And she said, "Had I read your book, or I heard you speak, you know what I would have done? I would have run as fast as I could to that lady and say, could I have the honor of paying for some of these items? It would be my honor to do that." She said, "But now I lost that moment." She said, "I'll never get it back again." And that's how I end the first book. The second book, really, the way it ends is a story that happened to me this past Yom Kippur when I lived in Woodmere in the 5 towns. And I davened in a very big shul beyond Israel of Woodmere, thousands of people. And Yom Kippur was over, and I was walking out. It's a big parking lot. And in the back of the parking lot, there was a woman who was sitting there, an elderly woman in a wheelchair. And I walked over to her and I said, "Are you okay? Is everything okay? Can I help you?" She said, "No, everything is fine." She said, my husband's saying Kiddush Lavana. He knows he'll be here in a minute. Thank you so much." I said, "Great." And as I'm walking away, she said to me, "But I have to ask you a question." She said, "This shul has thousands of people." I said, "Yeah." She says, "You're only the second person who came over to me and asked me if I was okay. How's that possible?" After Yom Kippur, after everything we did all day, you see an old woman sitting in the parking lot in a wheelchair. You don't go over to her to say to her, "Is everything okay?" It turned out everything was okay. But you know what? If you're not in it, you don't win it. If you don't look around and you don't open your eyes, you're never going to get those magic moments. So that's what the second book is a little bit more of a Musa book in a way at the end. But the stories in the second book are wow, they're amazing. And you know what? I just the book just came out literally a week ago, and so I've given out a few to some of my relatives and some other people. And I myself read the book, and I love the stories again and again. I really do.
So, is there one story or two stories that stuck out to you, both books, or even a story that didn't make it to either book?
Yeah, I mean, I told you the first story a little bit in a very concise way, but the story that really kind of changed my life and today has changed not only the life of the person who I did the Tzipor moment with, but literally has changed Jewish life in the world. Is the story, it's called Leap of Faith. It's in my first book, and it's about a trip I took to Argentina on behalf of the OU and being in a room in a place with college kids who are not religious and meeting a young boy who very, very nice boy, and I didn't speak Spanish, and someone came over and he translated for me. And when I asked him how he learned English, he told me he was a basketball player. He played basketball for a Catholic college, and I asked him, "How's that going to be? What are you going to do when you go back to Florida, where he went to school?" And he just basically told me that he doesn't know what he's going to do, but he started to cry. And at that moment, when I saw him cry, I said, I have to change this boy's life. And so the whole story is all about how I brought him to New York, to Yeshiva University. He eventually stayed there. The whole story is all about that story, that moment, literally that moment when I saw him, and it changed his life, it changed my life. It's an incredible story. It's called Leap of Faith. It's my favorite story of all time because I live it all the time. And that young man today is the NCSY director in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He's changing the lives of thousands and thousands and thousands of people. It's amazing. And sometimes when I see him, because he comes to New York, we go to visit him, and I say, his name is Martin Leibowitz. I say, Martin, did I dream this story or did it really happen? And he says, no, he calls me Zadie. He calls me now. He said, Zadie, he said, it happened. I said, okay. Because sometimes I get up in the middle of the night and I say, did it really, really happen? Because it all was within a 5-minute time span. And when I ask myself sometimes a question, like after 120, Kadosh Baruch Hu says to you, okay, how come you didn't take advantage of that moment? You were in Argentina. There was a young man. He was crying because he wanted to learn Torah. You walked away. Imagine all those opportunities we have when we could have done something, we should have done something, but we didn't. That's what I want the book. That's the message of the book. Become an observant Jew. Okay? You could be a frum Jew. You could be a chassid. I want you to be an observant Jew. Look around all the time and say to yourself, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu put me here? And it's all revolves around the mitzvah of the Tzipor. That's why I say it's a Tzipor moment. That's what the book's about. It's really not complicated. It's really simple, but it's beautiful. It's just a very nice, easy. So many people have told me they loved it on Shabbos. Wow, Shabbos afternoon in the middle now of the summer. It's a beautiful 2.5 hour read, and then you give it to your kids and they'll read it also.
Okay, so there you have it. That's the purpose of the book. Now, are you still collecting stories for potential third volume or just for yourself? And how can anyone get you any stories that they have?
Okay, well, first of all, we have a special deal. Now that the book came out, people will see. Just started this new week that we're advertising in Ami magazine and in Mishpacha, and also some local papers. Basically, if you come to the bookstore and you give them your name, your contact information, and one short little paragraph, basically explaining why you had a special Tzipor moment, then you get a free book. So you get a free book, or you could send it to me and you get a free book, and that's also going to be in part of the ads. And it's interesting. I wasn't sure that I would ever write a third book. I was pretty convinced I wouldn't. But right now already, people keep calling me, and the stories get better and better and better. And so if the stories are good enough and I like them, then maybe we'll put out a third book. And certainly I speak about it a lot. I just was away for a Pesach in a hotel where I was one of the scholars in residence. I'm going for Shavuos to another. So you never know. Whenever you finish speaking, you never know what kind of a gem you're going to find. So I don't say no. We'll see what happens. But I love hearing the stories because they're great. They're just great.
Is there an email address that people can email you?
Yeah, of course there's an email. I have to try to find it, but there is an email address someplace here. Hold on, what is it? I think it's Savitsky at Tzipor. I don't know. I have to look it up. It's in the
Okay,
ad.
so you'll send it to me after. I'll put it in the show's notes. If anyone interested, I'll put in the show's notes that they can send you.
Okay, right. I'll send you what it is.
Okay,
Not a problem. Right. Okay.
Perfect. And I'll add it. And of course, I'll link to the book as well for those interested in purchasing it. Check out the book. And
yeah, right.
Thank you, Stephen, for joining me to discuss the book.
Okay, my pleasure. Continue your great work. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.